Hey, hi everyone. So I think let's start, seeing as it is quite a short session. We don't want to spend too much time in the beginning to it. So let's kick it off. So like I said, thank you very much everyone for joining for our session today, where we'll be looking specifically at the topic of extended producer responsibility, or EPR. So I am Christopher van Schalkwyk. I'm from Circular South Africa, or CSA for short. And today I'm joined by Bonte Edwards from Circular Vision, one of CSA's partners. And I'll give the floor to her a bit later when we get into some detailed discussions regarding EPR specifically. So what I want to do firstly is just quickly introduce CSA firstly, and this Circular Lunch Club concept that we have started recently. So the CSA platform was created in 2023 with the vision to amplify the potential and value of a just circular economy transition in South Africa. So my colleague Mark will share some links in the chat, so you can read up a bit more about CSA and how you can join as a member and interact through our various platforms. So please have a read through those detailed and get in contact with us. So then specifically regarding this Circular Lunch Club format that we started doing, as I think most of us will know, there's so many ongoing webinars and content out there that I'm sure everyone has witnessed some sort of fatigue when it comes to these webinars. But what we've realized, it is still crucial to share this knowledge and to have to put this content out there and keep the momentum and conversations going. So we decided on this shorter and more bite-sized format of informal sessions, which people might also have more time for to actually attend the whole session. So what we'll do is we'll keep our sessions quite short and informal, and also give an opportunity for some audience interactions later on. So then, just quickly before I hand over to Bonte, I just quickly want to give a quick overview of EPR in South Africa, just to get introduce the topic and to set the stage for further discussions. So what we also did is, before this session, we had a quick poll just to answer these two basic questions. So we ask, how familiar is our audience with EPR? So I would say I'm part of this majority of 66% that said they're somewhat familiar. And I think that's quite common, where most of us have heard about EPR or know about the topic, but we don't really understand the fundamentals and the details of it. And then a third of people are very familiar. And then I like this, the positive feedback we got here. So we asked the question, do you believe that EPR is effective in significantly reducing waste in South Africa? And quite majority said yes. So I think that's also a discussion we can get into later, but more of why people think it is a effective strategy. So just then a quick definition and purpose of EPR. So it's an environmental policy approach in which producers are given significant responsibility for the treatment or disposal of post-consumer products. This can either be financial or physical responsibility, or both. So think about the Coke example, where you buy a Coke and you have the can, but you don't actually want the can, you only want the Coke. So the responsibility still lies on the producer on what happens with that can afterwards. So the purpose of EPR is to incentivize producers to design environmentally friendly products and to take a greater responsibility for the end of life management of their products, and hopefully in that reducing the overall environmental impact. So just a few technical definitions there. And to put that in pictures, because I'm also quite a visual person, I just like these few pictures that shows the exact points of the product life cycle where EPR can be involved. So that actually starts with the design of the product. It goes through manufacturing, the retail, how the product is consumed, and then the end of the product. And what I find very interesting on this picture is this last little arrow, because that's what we sometimes forget, is throughout this whole process, we should keep in mind all the data that we gather should actually inform, again, the design of a product, keeping end of life in mind. And then just quickly to take a step back, because we are speaking higher level on circular economy specific. For those of you that are not aware of the butterfly diagram of Ellen MacArthur, it's quite a nice visual representation of how material flows in loops and how we can actually keep material in the loop for longer and reduce waste at the end of the day. And then also looking at the 3 pillars of circular economy, it's quite interesting to see that EPR can directly address the 2 first pillars, so eliminating waste and pollution, and circulate products and materials for longer. So that's just to mention why EPR is so significant when it comes to the circular economy concept. And then I would like to hand over to Bonti. So I'll quickly give an introduction to Bonti. So Bonti has 19 years of experience in environmental project management, in addition to environmental compliance, auditing, waste categorizations, and waste management training for the Institute of Waste Management of South Africa. She also has expertise in resource efficiency, waste diversion projects, zero waste to landfill strategies, sustainability, and green procurement. So that's quite a mouthful. So maybe, Bonti, I'll hand over to you. I shall stop sharing on my side, and I'll hand over to you to give us a bit more detail about this EPR framework in South Africa.
Great, thanks, Christo.
Thank you very much, Bonti.
Nice to see so many people who are interested in this. It is a very interesting topic, and while I am here presenting on it, just to I'm not necessarily an expert, but I have been working in it for quite a long time. So I think I don't want to bore you too much with the legislative framework, but I think it's just important to get a concept to understand where EPR has come from over time, and then so that we can have the discussions around the benefits and challenges right at the end. So EPR has been coming for quite a long time in South Africa. We've had volunteer EPR or producer responsibility programs, especially in the plastic space, and Petco is, I think, one that's very well known to us. They've been around for a long time. They were doing this as a voluntary system for a very long time. But as early as 2014, industry did start engaging with the Department of Environmental Affairs at the time, now DFFE, about submitting a plan and formalizing this. Then there was a call in 2017 under Section 28 of the Waste Act, because I think it's important to understand where EPR sits. It sits under our National Environmental Management Waste Act. And then there was a Section 28 call for industry waste management plans. That industry submitted an EPR plan. It didn't quite meet the requirements, and the minister withdrew that. So since then, there's been a whole consultative process to work with industry and find out what is the best model. So it really was quite a long engagement and collaborative process. And we had regulations that were published on the 5th of November, 2020. But ultimately, I think my slides were slightly out of order. But I think what I wanted to get to is it has been a process, it has been consultative. And the EPR regulations were then published on the 5th of May, 2021. There was a 6-month period given to the PROs and producers to get ready to submit EPR schemes and their plans to government. And EPR started in year 1 on the 1st of January, 2022. So since then, there have been some amendments, and there have been 3 new notices that were published for portable batteries, pesticides, and the lubricant oil sector. The regulations for EPR that were published in 2021 are for the identified products of plastics and single-use packaging, lighting, and then the e-waste sector. So EPR is a lot more than, covers a lot more than I think everyone understands, that, the packaging sector. But so we're still in the early phases of EPR, even though EPR as a concept is quite a mature internationally. In South Africa, it is relatively young as a mandatory system. So I'm glad Christo gave you the definition for extended producer responsibility, because I think something that is key, and I don't want to bore you with the legislation and the definitions, but it is important to understand these and to know that EPR only applies to what the minister has called identified products, and there is a list of identified products in the EPR regulations. The producers are responsible for their products at the post-consumer stage, so that is included in the definition of EPR. But what they have generally done in South Africa is they have handed over that responsibility, or producer responsibility organizations have taken on the EPR responsibility for the producers or the brand owners, whoever is placing their products on the market. So that's where the PROs fit in. And we'll get to the challenges, because we have a lot of PROs that have been registered in South Africa. We have the ones that are relatively well known, but then there are a lot of others as well. I think it's also good to understand the definition of producer, because it's a very far-reaching. It basically includes the manufacturers, the brand owners, the retail, anyone who is engaged in the commercial manufacture, conversion, refurbishment, or the import of new or used identified products. And this is also important when we start to discuss the challenges around the EPR in South Africa. So in terms of the regulations, the PROs are, they are required to establish and implement an EPR scheme, which includes the entire value chain. They are held accountable for the operation and performance of the EPR scheme, not just by DFFE, but by their producers who are their members as well, and the ones who are paying the EPR fee. There are requirements that have been built into the regulations, and I think this is quite important when you look at it from a circular economy point of view, to conduct life cycle assessments of the identified products, because ultimately one would hope that this leads to better design and increased recyclability of products. There are environmental label and declarations that need to be implemented. And I think one of the most important ones, though, is that the regulations require that PROs integrate the informal waste collectors, reclaimers, and pickers into the post-consumer collection value chain. And to me, that's definitely one of the benefits of having EPR regulated and making it mandatory. They are also required to compensate waste collectors, reclaimers, and pickers, which is great. And they're something that other international EPR schemes don't necessarily have, are these requirements. But because in South Africa, we also have these transformation requirements and the promotion of SMMEs, which is quite unusual, but very specific to our South African context. And then maybe just to quickly show you, these are examples of the regulated targets. So the EPR regulations have got targets built into them. So for plastic PET bottles, for example, in year one, there was a 60% collection target and a 54% recycling target. Under the aluminium, the used beverage cans, so Coke cans, those kind of things, there's also an energy recovery and export target, which from a personal point of view, I don't feel should necessarily be a target, but more of a reporting parameter. Because, I mean, even from a circular economy way of looking at things, we don't necessarily want to be exporting. We want to be keeping things local, especially if one of your requirements is to report, is to support SMMEs. So it's just good to know that these targets are there, and they're there for everyone to look at because they are in the regulations. So then maybe just quickly to mention, sorry, just so that we've got time to chat, some of the benefits and challenges. So I think, and it was obviously highlighted in the poll, that people do feel that that EPR is having a positive effect and having increasing and improving recycling, which I think it does. It's also forcing conversation across the value chain and incorporating the waste pickers. The waste pickers and PROs have been operating side by side for a long time, but now they are actually forced in terms of the regulations to speak together, and it doesn't just rely on voluntary processes. And I think it's pushing them from just normal corporate social investment type of work into actually implementing proper recycling solutions. Some of the challenges we are dealing with in South Africa, there are about 45 PROs that have registered. It is a competitive space at the moment, even though it shouldn't be. So that is causing some challenges. But like I said, it is still early days. One of the other problems is, and it's not even with the competing PROs, people are levying the fee at different points. So some of them are doing it at a converter level. Some of them are doing it at the brand owner level where it's actually placed on the market. Others are doing it across the value chain. So it's very confusing, especially if you're a producer or a brand owner that places multiple products on the market. So you need to join different PROs and report differently for all of your different products. There have also been issues that the PROs have experienced, like vendor registration and procurement hassles with some of the larger corporate firms that have to pay their membership or their levies. So, I mean, those are things that kind of onboarding can take up to 6 months. And here we're sitting in year 3 of EPR. One of the other issues from the DFFE side is that the PROs don't have concurrence on their fee. Most on their year 2 or year 3 fee, they're also operating on the year 1 fee that was approved by DFFE, which is quite tricky as well because the targets haven't shifted. The targets have become harder to reach, but you're still operating on fees based on your year 1 budgets. So that is tricky for them. There have been issues engaging with municipalities because there's not separation at source is also not very mature in municipalities. So how do you access these materials? So these are just some of the challenges, very short and sweet. But I mean, I think it is generally a good thing. It has changed this recycling landscape. And I think there are a lot of benefits. We just need to see how do we take these benefits further and, make them more impactful. So that's me, short and sweet and very fast.
Thank you very much, Bonte. Appreciate that. And it's amazing once you get into this rabbit hole, which is EPR, there is really so much information out there and so much details that I'm sure none of us are even aware of. So like Bonte said, this is quite a quick and to the point session, but I think the idea, like we said earlier, is just to get people interested and actually know what they don't know and go out and read a bit more on this topic. So what we can do now, and what is quite an important part of these sessions, is just to have a bit of interaction. Let me share. I just quickly want to share the presentation again. Is to have a bit of a discussion. And if there's any questions, please do raise your hand. But maybe I'll kick us off with just a question, Bonte, if you know. So we've spoken about that this EPR is mandatory, and we've spoken about the targets, but how are producers actually kept accountable? How is this enforced on the actual producers? Because I think that might be one of the main challenges, is to keep people honest.
Every producer responsibility organization has to submit reports to DFFE. There's an interim report, which is due now on the 31st of July, and that's for their first half of the year. Then they submit an annual report, and in that annual report are also audited financials. So there is that kind of oversight. But as part of that reporting process, they do have to report on job creation, how many waste pickers they have supported, how much of the waste picker service fee, which is something we haven't even touched on, how much of that has been paid out, and how they've reached their targets. They also have to provide information on who they're partnering with and that kind of thing. So there is a strong reporting component that they have to report on and explain how they've met their targets. And they're meeting their targets on behalf of their members, who are the producers.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much, Bonte. Then I'll open the floor. So if there's any questions from the floor, please go ahead. Ask your questions or comments, or if there's any comments as well, please go ahead. The floor is open.
Very quiet.
Everyone is experts now on EPR. Maybe there's actually a lot of questions that came up in my mind. Maybe another question from my side is just from us that are in the room. I think most of us here are probably more on the consumer part of the value chain. So I'm just thinking out loudly, what's the impact, or how can we as consumers, how can we influence EPR? Or is there something we can do from our side? How does it affect us as consumers?
So, I mean, ultimately, I think as consumers, we are probably paying the EPR fee. It is probably passed on to us and included on the product, which is not, I mean, you can look at that in a number of ways, but we are the ones buying that product. So I think we can also buy responsibly and buy items that are recyclable. And then also as a consumer, like I mentioned, the separation at source hasn't been rolled out in all municipalities, and in some cases only in a portion. But a lot of municipalities have private buyback centers that you could drop your recyclables off. So I think it's the onus on us as well as to do that recycling ourselves, even if it's not a door-to-door collection service, and go to your buyback center, but also support the waste pickers. If you do have waste pickers in your neighborhood, put the things like the aluminum cans and PET bottles on the top. Municipalities probably don't want us to do that because they do then go through your bins, but they are there anyway. But let's find out ways that we can support them until there are better systems in place. See, Brenda had a question.
Thanks. Brenda, go ahead. I see your hand.
I was trying to unmute myself. So I think I'm also coming a little bit from the consumer side. So having also worked in this field for a while, more from a conservation perspective, and that, so many people I speak to have no idea about EPR. So what is the responsibility, and also where's the marketing that teaches the general public about this fact that there is an EPR? Because I think it is important to understand that there is legislation, and government's not good at communicating it. And that also there is a lot of work being done, and there is change coming, and there will be continued changes. But this is not being communicated to the general public. So that's my question. And I don't know where that responsibility would lie in terms of communicating it, and also to simplify language, because again, it becomes a confusing topic. So how do we reach the general public? I mean, having come from conservation, again, just to reach general public about a penguin is difficult. But I think the people that are at least doing cleanups and that, they need to understand that there are these things happening, but it's not filtering down. I mean, I'm speaking to people who generally, I think, should know that there is something like this going on, and it's not coming across.
Yeah, so I think they might not necessarily know the words EPR or PROs, but they might know Petco or Polyco, for example, because I know they support a lot of the cleanups, or Plastics SA. They support a lot of the cleanup. So I think the communication might not be in the wording of EPR, but there is a lot of communication around recycling. And like you say, it's very confusing as well, because all of our items are labeled differently. And ultimately, any packaging we buy, we should be able to put that straight into our bag that goes to the drop-off center or to the recycler. We shouldn't have to worry. That's how I feel personally. We should know that what is on our shelves is recyclable. And we shouldn't be the ones reading the labels necessarily.
Can I just come back to that, though? Because again, with Plastics SA, most people don't understand the role that they've played over all the years in this. I worked with John for many years on beach cleanups, and I don't think people really can appreciate just how much effort is actually coming from Plastics SA. So again, for me, it's like, how does this get to the general public that there is actually all this effort from a very strategic and a higher level happening? It just feels like we're not really getting there. And I know we all have a responsibility to share that message and to get it to the general public, but it's almost like we don't have enough of the general tools that might help that process.
Help them. Yeah, so there's a lot of communication and education and awareness around how to recycle, what to recycle, but sometimes it doesn't link. It is coming from a background of EPR, but it doesn't link it to EPR. People don't. So I think that's an important point. Okay, so there's some questions in the chat as well.
Thank you very much for that inputs. I'll give to the next person, Younger. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Christo, and good day, everyone. My name is Younger, and my background is in environmental education. And I'm really wondering about, and I like the diagram of circular economy that was shown here. And I'm wanting to challenge us in the sector in general into really thinking about, why do we advocate for messaging around recycling when we know that access to recycling is not enough? And then also to Brenda's point around people not being able to recycle, knowing how to recycle, understanding what those numbers on all these packaging stand for. that do you think that this is possibly a step towards circularity in all of its entirety, that even when a product is being introduced to the market, there's already that thinking that a single grain of packaging is going to be able to end up back into the system? Do you think that this is the step towards that, or how do we anticipate that going within the coming years?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely a step towards that. We need to redesign a lot of our packaging. It needs to be more recyclable. The stuff that we are putting out there, it's not the be all and end all, because we also know that there is a limit to how many times certain materials can be recycled. So there are those technical constraints. But I think it's the best we can do right now, and it's part of the process of redesigning and driving that change. But I think we've spoken about education and awareness. That is actually one of the mandates of PROs as well. They are supposed to be doing education and awareness. So we need to get that messaging out there. And to Brenda's point as well, we need to make it clearer. They're focusing on a lot. Everyone's focusing on a lot. And I think we are getting there slowly. There are labeling requirements. There are on-pack labeling information out there, but that is also confusing. So we also need to design a system that speaks to us as a consumer, so we know what we're buying. Is it or is it not recyclable? But there's also confusion out there for recyclers. So there are recycler-facing labels and there are consumer-facing labels. And I think this is the difficulty that we're all trying to navigate now. And like I said, we are still in the early phases of EPR. So it's really good to have this input as well, and be able to feed this into the EPR process so they can improve.
Yeah, very well said. I think it comes back to the diagram earlier, where all these inputs should actually go back to the initial design, because I think that's the most crucial part of the circular economy, is that the initial design of products. And then I think we only have 1 or 2 minutes left, so I'll quickly give 1 minute, Nkedu, and then Moses. You guys can each have 1 minute to close us off. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm in the medical space, specifically medical assistive devices. I've been working for the last 6 months in the circular economy project. I'm interested in finding out, because I've watched suppliers of the extend the devices, because it's actually going to cannibalize. How do you go about such? Because if you want to extend the lifespan of the device, anyway, medical devices are categorized as single-use devices. But from a professional's point of view, I know that not all these devices have a one lifespan. They can be used multiply, especially in the industry I'm in, which is a low-risk industry. I wanted to find out what could be is there any advice, any pointers in that space where I'm at?
Yeah.
For example, a prosthetic leg, if all of us were to have a prosthetic leg, I was going to say, if all of us here had a prosthetic leg, surely after 5 years where the lifespan is finished, we wouldn't have used it in equal amounts. Some of the technologies could still be reusable, and they could be reused by someone who cannot actually afford such technologies. So that's where basically I'm at.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And I have had some discussions around this space, because there are even silly things like a neck brace, for example, or crutches that people throw away because there isn't a system for reuse and recirculating these things. And I think something that was started by Green Cape in South Africa, in Cape Town, the symbiosis program, their WISP. I think there's a lot of opportunity for something like that in the space, where let people know that these items are available, and maybe there is a market for them to be recycled or to be reused, or even the components become components of another prosthetic, for example. So I think it's putting those systems in place, and that thinking around the sharing.
Yeah, very good point. Thanks, Bondi. And I think it's all about that, those systems, getting those systems in place to actually reuse and get to a sharing economy rather. And then Moses, I see there's a lot of action in the chat as well. If there's any questions we don't get to, we'll have a follow-up email to everyone, which has a summary of what we spoke about, and we'll address any questions that we couldn't get to yet here in that. So Moses, I'll quickly give you the floor. If you can take 1 minute, and then I'll close off us.
Okay, thank you very much. I just wanted to find out how will the system pays the waste picker. I understand in the past, Petco and BenQ, they come up with a solution whereby waste pickers were supposed to register to a buyback center. Is it still the case? Because now I'm thinking, okay, as much as we are the waste pickers, or as much as there are waste pickers that are doing the job, how are the bigger guys going to be able to make sure that the money that they're paying to the EPRS gets to the waste pickers, the guys that are actually collecting the waste from the household? Thank you.
So I'll just answer quickly. So I think that's one of the complexities of the system but I think systems like BenQ and Lariat that are being used by buyback centers where waste pickers have registered, that allows that traceability so that you can prove that you have paid out the waste pickers. So unfortunately, not all buyback centers have got BenQ and Lariat systems, and they can't provide that traceability. And that has been one of the delays in implementing, and one of the teething problems that they're trying to overcome. So they are being paid out. It is slower than I think everyone would have liked. But the faster we roll out those systems, the more we can pay out. The traceability is important for producers, but also for the reporting to DFFE. So it has to be done, unfortunately.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that question, Moses, and thank you, Bonte. So this was a very useful and interactive session. Thank you very much, everyone. I think we are a few minutes over. Apologies, we're over a few minutes already, but I think this was an interesting discussion, and I think a lot of value came out of this. So just as I mentioned, we will send out a summary of this whole discussion and also include a few resources that you can actually go and read up further. Because like we said, the purpose of these sessions are to create the momentum, share a quick few bits of knowledge, so that people can go further and educate themselves a bit more on these topics. So please, like we mentioned, please follow us on our new WhatsApp channel for Circular South Africa, and also on LinkedIn. And like Mark shared our website, please go ahead and join us as members. And we also have quite a detailed knowledge hub on our website. So please feel free to have a look there, where we also discuss things like EPR and things like that. So thank you very much again, everyone, for joining. I think I will officially close the session for now, but looking very much forward to the next one, and see you guys soon again. Have an excellent day further.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.